Alright, welcome back everyone to another episode of my What If Spider-Man Replaced Batman series. Today we're going into year 6 of Peter's career as Spider-Man. So, Peter has finally returned to his life as a crime fighter, and the break was perhaps something he kinda needed. He's finally back to the Spider-Man we all know and love, the wisecracking web slinger, the playful paragon of justice, the I can't think of any more. And this isn't the confused or inexperienced Spider-Man that we've had for the last couple of years. He's the most potent he has ever been, incredibly effective when it comes to crime fighting, and it's safe to say that there's not many among Gotham's rogues who can actually trouble this all-new Spider-Man. And this brings me onto something I've only been able to partly discuss. How would a comic book accurate Spider-Man actually do against Batman's villains? Of course, we've done a lot of talking about how he may scale up to a specific opponent, but let's think about a normal year for Gotham, where many of its villains may be roaming around and causing havoc at the same time, akin to a situation in the Arkham games. Well, the honest answer is that it really depends on the writer. Of course, you want your hero to struggle, but there is no reason for Spider-Man to have any issues in any given scenario. As I have probably said before, Batman's rogues are specifically engineered to be a foil for Batman. When you put someone like Superman against one of Batman's villains, you're shown how ineffective they really are. This is why we have different type of categories, such as the street tier, which Batman would belong to, and Spider-Man is also considered a street tier hero, though since his introduction he has been dealing with superpowered threats. That is not to say that Batman can't deal with superpowered threats or doesn't have any superpowered villains. Generally, the main thing Batman's villains have going for them is their intelligence or their resources, as they're not really designed to be handling any other person other than Batman. But obviously, that's not what people care about nor want to hear, so let's actually try and run through this. Batman's most infamous foes commonly have two things going for them, as I've said before, but let's define them as combat prowess and intelligence. So combat prowess is defined as their martial arts ability, strength, and also their speed. It is immediately negated by the fact that Peter has powers. Yes, while most of these villains actually have superhuman feats, Batman included, they are only listed or meant to be thought of as peak human physicality, whatever the hell that means. But essentially, they are bounded by the constraints of being only human, whereas Spider-Man is not limited in that, because he is classified as superhuman. So while humans in peak condition have been shown to display strength and speed feats comparable to a superhuman, Spider-Man has always consistently been shown to be above the standard of a peak human, no matter how variable that standard is. Spider-Man has never been considered the greatest martial artist, but being superpowered means that if he is coming up against a foe with great martial arts ability, he will just be stronger and faster. It's only if his foe is also powered that there's gonna be trouble. So who are the Batman villains who actually have some measure of super strength, speed, or agility? Bane we've discussed heavily recently. He obviously has super strength, is still meant to be thought of as peak human, but that strength is still not comparable to Spider-Man. That also goes for other similar characters such as, for instance, Bronze Tiger and etc. etc. Villains such as Clayface, Man-Bat or Solomon Grundy have more of a chance due to their unnatural properties and also superpowers, and it will be these sorts of characters that cause most of the problems for Spider-Man on a normal day in Gotham. On the other hand, intelligence is the most deadly and common thing amongst Batman's villains. They'll typically set up tricks and traps that are designed to show how crafty Batman is. Thing is though, Spider-Man is also a genius. He can tinker and make gadgets like Batman can. Added powers also makes him more of a threat to Gotham's underworld. Joker, Riddler, Mr. Freeze and Scarecrow and even Hugo Strange may be able to outsmart Spider-Man from afar, but in any physical confrontation, they have to make use of some sort of boundary that will prevent Spider-Man from just punching the daylights out of them. In short, and I know I've said this before, but I think it was a worthy topic to bring up again, Gotham is getting steamrolled by Spider-Man. The more interesting discussion is how Batman would do against Spider-Man's rogues. Because he is only human, there is more he has to do in order to keep up with superpowered villains. What interesting methods may he develop, etc. That may be a video on the horizon, so like and comment if you want to see it. So as this long talk has helped to cement, Gotham will be well protected under Spider-Man in these leading months. So harkening back to how the last part ended, Lex Luthor has staked his claim on Spider-Man. And some of you were confused to Lex Luthor's intentions. What is it that he actually wants? Well, Lex Luthor, I would say, is a man obsessed with the idea of Superman, or the concept of the Superman. It should be him with all those powers, though he was never blessed as such, only with a towering intellect that services his own ego. Now imagine in his quest for power, he or his scientists at LexCorp begin experimenting with bioengineered animals that could grant powers. It's not unreasonable to say, considering Dr. Kirk Langstrom had similar ideas. Though maybe all the tests fail, or it only produces imperfect creations. Either way, the project is abandoned and Lex Luthor sets his sights on broader horizons, something that will actually guarantee results. But suddenly, years later, a hero emerges with all of the powers Lex was meant to have. It wouldn't take a genius to connect the dots. The project is reopened as it was a success. They just weren't looking hard enough. And so they try to recreate the radioactive spider, but can't. It only means one thing. Luthor is the type of man to think that Spider-Man is his property to experiment and research on, so that he can procure the correct formula and replicate his powers for himself. Perhaps even go beyond the powers of Spider-Man and get him closer to his true goal. Back with Peter. As he is Spider-Man again, he is starting to question his job at LexCorp. Returning to his superhero life now means he works for the clearly villainous Lex Luthor, who of which has made alarmingly more appearances at LexCorp Gotham. In one night of sleuthing, Peter overhears a discussion between Lex and his assistant Mercy, and they're discussing something called Project Spider. Peter then realizes that they have figured out how Spider-Man got his powers. I mean, of course he did. He's Lex Luthor. For now, he decides that he does need to keep his job so that he can keep an eye on whatever Project Spider is. He's concerned, of course, that Lex knows about his secret identity. After the mess with Penguin, he's not trying to take any more risks. He's also worried that maybe it was Penguin himself who leaked his identity, and that's how they figured it out, though nothing seems to be out of the ordinary in his day-to-day life. Meanwhile, let's discuss some of the other characters in Gotham. Barbara and Peter's relationship may be incredibly strained at this point, and it's possible that they have split. Considering the pressures of having to keep a secret identity from each other, it's entirely realistic that this is the cause of the divide. I mean, there's going to be entire parts of the day where they don't see or hear from each other, so it's going to be hella suspicious, as I would say. So they part sort of awkwardly, and such is the life of Peter Parker. Selina Kyle remains unscathed from the war of the prior year, though the media have started to turn against her. It's important to note that Selina is a character who never really abandons her life as a thief or criminal easily in any type of Batman media. Sometimes she does, as she falls in love with Bruce Wayne / Batman, though with no one like that in this universe, it's safe to assume that she's still dealing with the criminal underworld. Though I would say it's nothing as drastic as her counterparts like the Penguin, Falcone, or even Two-Face. Gotham's population still entirely adores her, cause she just got it like that. Spider-Man has been tracking his suit. It is important hardware that he does sort of need, and it makes sense that he would have implemented a sort of tracker inside of the suit. He finds the location to be Selina Kyle's very own orphanage. Of course, she's there to see why Spider-Man is sneaking around, and then invites him in. So this whole idea of Selina Kyle owning an orphanage isn't really an idea that I've taken from the comics. If it is in the comics, then that's not where I've gotten the inspiration, but it would be cool to see. To be honest though, it is an idea that I've actually fallen in love with and wanted to explore a bit more in this video in how it works, like how she'll run it and etc. I think it very much makes sense for her character, the idea of orphans being akin to lost cats that you would see running around in the street, and of course her being Catwoman, she would take them all in and care for them in a way. She would be very much like Varys from Game of Thrones, who makes use of orphans, dubbing them little birds, and they essentially serve as his spies and informants. Varys is described as a spider who has cast his web all over the city, so he's very informed. Selina would follow along these lines, and this would be a part of why she has been able to become so powerful, though she actually cares for the children under her and works to better their situation. So her orphanage is much like the Xavier Institute, providing education and homes for orphan children. And so the children are trained to essentially become little versions of Catwoman, but I don't believe she's prepping them to become thieves. In most modern iterations of Selina Kyle, her backstory is depicted as her having to do anything to survive in the rough city of Gotham. So she's aware of how hard it is to grow up in the city, so I think she would have empathy in that way. She's a villain, not a monster. Back to Spidey's investigation. So Selina allows him to investigate and they both follow the tracker. The thief seemed to amateurishly hide it inside of the boy's dormitory. And much like in the original canon, the same boy who tried to steal the wheels off the Batmobile is that same child who stole Spider-Man's suit, Jason Todd. And that was correctly guessed by a comment that actually made me laugh out loud when I saw it. I did try to make it obvious. When they meet up with Jason, he vehemently denies the accusation. To be fair to him, Spider-Man did throw it away, so he surrendered the right to be his own. Okay, let me stop. While Selina and Peter are discussing the situation, Jason immediately books it and just escapes from under their noses. They both follow him to a hideout he's made within the city, where he has stashed the suit and is currently trying to strip it for parts. And so this is where Selina will finally tell Peter about who exactly this kid is. Jason, the most troubled of the kids in her institution. His father was an enforcer for the mob, a life which unfortunately saw him gunned down by Penguin and his men. His mother, despite being unable to even take care of herself, became his sole guardian. She too passed a while back, which left Jason all alone. Spider-Man empathizes. He sees some of himself within him. He still remembers the anger and desperation he felt after Uncle Ben had passed. So he tries the soft approach, swinging on down and trying to ask for the suit back. Jason is stunned by the sudden appearance of Spider-Man. His eyes seem to widen, and he asks Spider-Man if he could see his web shooters. Being the type of guy he is, he of course obliges, but then Jason just kicks him and then he tries to take off with more of Peter's stuff. However, Catwoman swoops down and swipes both of the items from Jason in one swift motion, telling Jason he couldn't possibly hope to out-thief the master of all thieves. That's cool. Spider-Man finally gets his suit back, much to a disheartened Jason Todd, though he manages to have a heart-to-heart with him, and for once Jason's anger seems to soften. Despite how he may act, Jason would be among the many children who look up to Spider-Man in this period, and so Selina thinks that Spider-Man is a good influence on him, so he promises to visit every once in a while. Meanwhile, Lex Luthor is tightening his grip on Gotham. One night on patrol, Spider-Man is intercepted by the Black Spider and probably some LexCorp drones. Thinking on what he discovered about Lex's secret project, he's sure that they want to capture him, though Black Spider is tight-lipped and drones don't speak. The fight seems even until suddenly Spider-Woman joins in on the dance, and together they're able to push Black Spider into an escape. She's also discovered that Lex Luthor is trying to capture him, and they both can probably figure out for what reasons. She lets him know that she's been investigating Oscorp. We switched universes there for a second. I mean LexCorp. She's been investigating them because of their shady, confidential projects, their business dealings, and obviously downright evil mastermind for a CEO. She feels as if she's close to being able to bring the whole operation down, and she says that she has a way in to LexCorp. Spider-Man offers his help, but she declines as Spider-Man and Spider-Woman snooping around LexCorp would make things way too obvious. The next day, Peter is approached by Officer Barbara Gordon. They probably haven't spoken in months, but she asks him for his help in an investigation of LexCorp. He obliges her and offers his help. Peter is under the assumption that Spider-Woman had tipped off the GCPD and they sent Barbara, so he helps her into the building on a late night. Much to the contrary, she confides in him that she's doing this without the knowledge of the GCPD, which is putting her job at risk, and this shocks Peter as, what is her purpose then? They can't quit now though, so together they continue on. They uncover the different experiments performed at LexCorp. They start with more surface level things, but going deeper they find studies on kryptonite, and then the genetic experiments. They see all sorts of animals, grotesque in appearance, strange in behaviors, and exhibiting abnormal abilities. Peter comments that they're splicing different animals together. This was something that he didn't even know of. Then they travel deeper into LexCorp's underground floors and find more concerning discoveries, all of which Barbara is taking pictures of as evidence. Malformed and disgusting abominations trapped in pods. They look of human flesh, though nothing at all has any form resembling a human. It could be cloning attempts, Peter would think, but he can't be sure. LexCorp would definitely have some sort of robotic drones patrolling these deeper sections, and Peter would be disabling them via his LexCorp access. However, suddenly, Black Spider would burst into the room and march down the hallway. He's accompanied by two LexCorp officers, aware that all of the drones have been forced to turn off by an employee. Peter and Barbara just narrowly avoid him, and then they divert their route upstairs. Barbara needs Peter to help her to get to LexCorp's higher floors, but these are areas where Peter doesn't really have any clearance. But of course, Barbara didn't come unequipped. She's able to brute force her way past LexCorp's security. All she needs is Peter to watch her back. They make their way higher and higher, again dodging drones and LexCorp officers. Cue essentially what is the Spider-Man PS4 Mary Jane sequence in Oscorp. Yep, this is exactly where I got the idea from. What can I say, the game had a good story. They're sure that Black Spider must be on their trail, so they're traveling quite quickly. They make their way to one of the highest floors, a room overlooking Gotham City. Inside of the room are rows upon rows of glass boxes. Can you care to guess what's inside of them? Peter's suspicions are confirmed. Lex knows about the spider that gave him his powers and is trying to recreate it. But the truth is far scarier than he could ever realize. There's enough spiders in this room to make an army of Spider-Men, all under the control of Lex Luthor. Barbara is able to make a similar conclusion, but first she's shocked at the fact that Spider-Man's powers came from LexCorp. Of course, this was something that she wasn't aware of. She's taking photos of everything in that room. However, they both hear the doors open up behind them, and who else should stride in from the elevator but Mercy Graves? Peter is alerted to the danger before Mercy can catch them and tells Barbara as much. She quickly ushers him behind one of the cases and dives behind another, and they watch Mercy patrol the hallways. A drone flies in from behind her and she commands it to scan the entire floor. Both their hearts drop. There's nowhere to escape, and with what they've seen already, they're unsure Mercy will have any mercy for them when she finds them. Okay, I'm sorry for that one. The drone inches towards them, but Barbara quickly grabs it and disables it. However, this action definitely will catch Mercy's attention. I know you're here. Without any escape plan, Barbara locks eyes with Peter. Her face is strained, but through it she has a steely and determined gaze. Peter is worried and he hesitates on what to do. Barbara whispers for him to stay calm and to stay behind her, and also that she's sorry. She slips on a mask, discarding her clothing, revealing a scarlet attire with a white spider sprawling across her back. "It's just me," she says, rolling out from behind the case. Mercy runs forward and Spider-Woman immediately kicks her back. They engage into a brawl, with Spider-Woman gaining the upper hand due to her surprise. In the ensuing fight, they wrestle each other across the room and knock over a case or two. This gives Peter ample time to escape and suit up as Spider-Man. He webs out Mercy and pulls Spider-Woman out the window. She's stunned to see Spider-Man there, but is more concerned for Peter. She thinks that they left him behind. Remember, she is not aware of Spider-Man's secret identity. However, there's no time to register this as they see Black Spider gunning for them. But Peter widens the gap between them and he is forced to relent the chase. Unbeknownst to Peter, one of the spiders had latched onto his clothes in the brawl. You can imagine where this is going. Peter brings Spider-Woman to a safe spot far away from LexCorp. Now she's panicked as she believes she left Peter back in that chaos, but she's also confused as to Spider-Man's sudden appearance. To calm her, he only needs to take off his mask. "It's only fair since you told me," he says. And there's just kind of a oh moment between them. The entire time they had been spending more time with each other than they had even realized. All the strange disappearances, excuses and cancellations making all the more sense. Wait, since you were 15? Later, Spider-Man meets up with Jason Todd. The spider from LexCorp clung to his clothes and moved to his suit, and it quickly leaves Peter and hides itself in Jason's dorm. That night, Jason looks to his window, and then he feels the spider crawling upon his hand. It bites him and he yelps to a sharp pain. He smacks the spider, killing it instantly. And then after, he probably goes to sleep, I don't know. Meanwhile, Lex Luthor assumes that criminals had broken into his lab. Not gonna lie, I doubt Lex Luthor would keep CCTV if he is doing secretive illegal stuff, mainly because it could be easily taken as evidence against him. Either way, I don't think Barbara nor Peter would be careless enough to be caught via CCTV. However, let's assume that Lex Luthor does have CCTV. The only way that they would get caught is when they actually suit up and have a fight with Mercy. So let's say Mercy does hand him the CCTV. After reviewing the footage, he angers after seeing Spider-Man and Spider-Woman in his lab. Peter and Barbara end the day back at Aunt May's. Things seem so much easier for them after learning each other's identity. Who knew? They agree that they need to bring down LexCorp. Nothing good can come of Lex Luthor and an army of superpower soldiers. Aunt May feasts them with some of her special flapjacks? What the hell are even flapjacks? Is anyone gonna tell me what they are? In the morning, 11-year-old Jason Todd wakes up and feels very strange. You see, the issue I had with Dick Grayson, as I've discussed previously, is that he's untrained. Batman isn't there to give it to him, and that would be very redundant if I continued along the same lines for Jason. A perfect opportunity arises thanks to one Miss Selina Kyle. Being within Selina's institution, he's given all of the training that it would offer along with the knowledge. He's still very young, so there's obviously a lot he still has to learn as well. He's nimble, quick, strong, and knows how to fight. He's not the greatest acrobat nor lithe like Dick was, but certainly is more skilled. And as he figures out while undergoing training, he has powers. He manages to master them well, and he only trusts Selina well enough as the first person to reveal them to. Either that or she would just figure it out. They contact Spider-Man and Peter is in disbelief. There's someone out there who's actually like him. Obviously forgetting Black Spider for, as I say again, very obvious reasons. But he is also concerned as this means Lex Luthor has radioactive spiders that can grant powers. It's Selina who takes Peter aside and convinces him to take Jason on as his next protege. It doesn't take much convincing as they both agree he does need guidance. And so begins Jason Todd's training as the newest Scarlet Spider, or the moniker he much more prefers, the Spiderling. I personally think Spiderling suits Jason much more than any other name. As for his suit, just like in the comics, it will be very similar to Dick Grayson's, where it's the spider armor but made with a more lightweight armor that serves to protect Jason. It's still bulky and Jason absolutely hates it, but his increased strength allows him to not be too hindered by the added protection. He's given web shooters and debuts next to Spider-Man on his next patrol. Peter isn't the only one who realized that Project Spider was a success. Lex Luthor soon deciphers this. Spider-Man and Spiderling are confronted yet again by Black Spider, but this time under the pretense that Lex has extended an invitation to both of them. They arrive in that same room on one of the highest floors of LexCorp Tower, but this time the room is completely void, save for a desk at which Lex Luthor is sitting at. Lex greets them both, apologizing for Mercy and Black Spider's actions. Firstly, he explains himself. The spiders that granted them both of their powers are properties of LexCorp. They're highly unstable experiments that were never meant to be accessed by ordinary people. So the effects that they have on humans are untested. If they're left unchecked, they could go awry, and even he cannot foresee the dangers of their radioactive powers being let loose. He needs their help in order to properly research their powers. Didn't think you cared so much about Gotham, Lex. It's true, I detest this city, but it does not mean I do not care for its people, like you do. He smirks. And what do we get in return, huh? Matching haircuts? My forgiveness, first of all. You broke into my labs, and I am not one to forget. Then, my protection, my aid, and access to all of my vast resources. Gotham can be pacified. It will never be threatened again. I even brought the clown to heal for you, so you know I mean it. His petty bounty, gone. Join me, Spider-Man. It's the smart choice. This temptation is something that Spider-Man has fought against many times in his life. So easily he's able to take a firm stance against Lex, easily seeing through his lies. Jason, I imagine, is more naive, but he would follow whatever Spider-Man is doing. Lex Luthor is the one to notice this and tries to exploit it. You think of me as evil because of your blind loyalty to Spider-Man. What do you think is the right choice? Jason doesn't know what to say and only looks to Spider-Man to offer reply. No matter, I will have my due. Subject S-2 and Subject S-1. You both belong to Lex Luthor. He steps back and armor begins to attach itself to him. His warsuit, an armor that's made for fighting the likes of Superman, begins to cover his body. He charges at the duo, smacking Jason aside and trying to lunge at Spider-Man. Lex Luthor's warsuit makes him incredibly dominant in this battle. He has force fields to protect himself, lasers and energy projectiles to keep both of them at bay. Spider-Man by himself is usually a tricky target, so two of them are gonna be a nightmare. Lex would be getting frustrated, blasting away at them as they dodge. He has to be careful not to destroy his own building. I don't think he much needs Mercy nor Black Spider to take them on. It would also be redundant if they were involved in this fight, as both of the Spider-Man together are more than capable of taking them out. Jason is furious that he was hit, charging in, but Lex only grabs him and throws him around the room. Spider-Man attempts to help, catching Jason and then taking the fight back to Lex Luthor. They pressure and attempt to overwhelm him as a duo, but Lex uses his force fields and pushes them back with blasts and lasers, slowly closing in on them. Spider-Man attempts to attack, but Lex catches the blow and pushes him towards the face of the window. Jason is getting even more angry. Peter tries to tell him to wait, but the boy rushes in, leaving himself wide open. Lex seizes the chance, grabbing him by the neck and driving him through the window, and then carrying him into the open sky. Whilst this is going on, Peter texts Barbara to round up the GCPD and take them directly to LexCorp. With them currently distracting Lex, they should be able to catch him out as Barbara had initially planned to. Spider-Man then catapults himself to their height, bombarding his foe with kicks and punches. Each time he falls, he uses Lex as an anchor to swing back up around. Underneath the assault, Lex can only let go of Jason and then tries to fight back against Spider-Man. Peter begins to suffer heavy attacks from Lex's warsuit. A beam threatens to rip through him and he only just manages to move out of the way. Lex grabs Spider-Man and throws him into a nearby building, and then another on which he drags him up the face of it before throwing him onto the LexCorp building. Peter regains his composure, but Lex is immediately on him again in a vehement rage, destroying the ground around him in order to take Spider-Man out. The explosions of Lex's weapons catch him off guard, allowing Lex to finally catch up again. Jason struggles to keep up with the two and he's lagging far behind. So Spider-Man is left to himself to duke it out with Lex Luthor, hand-to-hand combat style. His warsuit, while powerful, is far slower than Spider-Man, but eventually he catches him, his mechanical hand crushing Spider-Man's head, finally holding him in his grasp. Tired and angry. "I only need one of you," Lex would declare, threatening to finish him off. Though Jason finally makes it back onto LexCorp, swinging up and seeing his hero weak in the hands of Lex Luthor. And his blood boils. His whole body surges with raging electricity. Peter sees what's happening and escapes Lex's grip, pushing him towards the charging Jason. Lex attempts to activate his force field, but Jason breaks through it. Lex yells when Jason grabs him on his shiny bald head. He awakes his venom shock, blasting Lex away with all of his energy by temporarily stunning Lex Luthor. It gives both him and Peter enough time to strip him of his armor. He falls and kneels between the two spiders. Jason runs to finish him, but Peter grabs him. "Let me go, he's right there." "Jason, this isn't what we do." Jason twists out of his grip and backs up towards Lex. "But why not? We have the power to make him stop forever." "Is that what you think these powers are for? There are always consequences, meaning we don't get to do whatever we want. We must choose how we use our powers." Peter points at Spiderling's chest, where Spider-Man's symbol sits, and Spider-Man chooses to be good. Jason nods in understanding, though Lex obviously has other thoughts. "How naive of you. Good and evil, there's no such thing. You will learn soon enough that evil acts are necessary to bring about good. But join me, and you will never know of life's displeasures ever again. Jason looks at Lex, and then Peter, and then Lex again, seemingly confused. He backs up towards Peter without uttering a single word. Fine. Rot in this city for all I care. I would suffer 100 humiliations in order to never see this filthy backwater ever again. So when it comes to the battle between Lex Luthor and Spider-Man, it's not really an even matchup, you know. Lex Luthor's suit is designed mostly to fight Superman or other Kryptonians, so it makes heavy use of kryptonite. Despite that, it is still very powerful. I mean, you can see here he's getting blitzed by the Flash, but his armor still holds. However, Spider-Man has displayed strength feats that puts him on equal terms with Lex Luthor. He has been able to break free of Iron Man's grip and only hurt his hand swinging across his jaw. This is a character who has an armor like Lex Luthor, but is generally designed to fight a wider variety of people, and I would say that is generally, or maybe I should say arguably, a better armor. Doc Ock also broke Scorpion's jaw when he wasn't holding back, but to be fair, his jaw was the only place that wasn't armored, and this is mentioned in the comic. I've discussed Spider-Man's strength in previous parts, so I'm along the lines of believing that he would be able to do a certain extent of damage to Lex's armor. However, we also have to remember that there are two Spider-Men at the scene, Jason Todd, who have obviously granted the powers of Miles Morales. Miles has much of the same skill set as Peter. His strength could be argued to be less due to his age. However, generally he is still pretty strong. I thought this was pretty funny. He straight out one-shots Hobgoblin in one comic. But the thing that can really turn the tide is Miles' Venom powers. Here we can see Miles straight up dogging on the ultimate Green Goblin. His Venom powers have helped him take out Fin Fang Foom at one point in the comics, but obviously the canonicity of that could be questioned. Something more respectable is that it briefly knocked out Rhino. Essentially, if Lex's head is unguarded, as it typically is, then I do believe Miles or Peter have the capacity to defeat him. But generally Lex would be a very tough opponent. It's more in their favour because they can easily team up on him, and that is obviously always an advantage in a fight. Mercy and Black Spider arrive having been rooted out by the GCPD. They prepare to defend Lex, but he only needs to raise a hand. Enough. We're done here. Obviously, Barbara has arrived with the GCPD and she's collected enough evidence so that they are able to charge him with crimes against humanity. And so, Lex Luthor is taken into custody. As we all know though, he will eventually be out. Peter watches the entire case unfold on the national news, where unsurprisingly Lex manages to pin all of his crimes on the Black Spider, possibly due to the added assistance of the newly elected mayor of Gotham. Oh yes, remember how there was like a whole election campaign thing in the last part? Well, the election occurs during this year. Many of the candidates had dropped out after the events in the previous year, however a small few remained steadfast. There was of course one victor, and his name may be familiar to you all, Hugo Strange. Lex returns to Metropolis a free man. After being defeated by the Spider-Men, his pride is wounded. Mercy. Yes, Luthor, he's not strong enough. He beat you, sir. You know what I mean. Prepare Subject B0. Project Spider was a failure. Meanwhile, back with Spider-Man. Peter Parker is out of a job. Story of his life. But this time he isn't deterred. Still reeling from what he had witnessed at LexCorp. He vows to do better and use his scientific prowess to better mankind. After he graduates from college, he decides that he will start up his own company, calling it Parker Tech. So for this whole series, right, I've been using a year by year setup to describe the events in DC Spider-Man's life, and now it's gonna finally make sense why I decided to do it like that. In the next part, we will be having a 4-year time skip to allow many of the characters, such as Jason Todd, to grow. This does mean that in between these 4 years, Peter will probably have many more adventures and meet different heroes/villains that I probably won't mention. Anyway, that is it for today, everyone. If you did enjoy, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you all in the next one. Peace.